This seems to be an age-old question that millions of people are Googling every single day, and I'm here today to finally help you make a decision. What's going on, guys? My name is David Tomic, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be comparing Revit against ArchiCAD. These two programs are definitely the industry leaders in BIM management and works. If you're in the architecture profession, if you're an engineer, if you're anybody in the construction industry, you've definitely heard about these two programs. Personally, I've used them both. I've learnt them from start to finish, and I have a very good understanding of what each of them can do. On a day-to-day basis, I now use ArchiCAD for my job because that is the program we use in my office. So I guess that gives me enough of an opinion and enough knowledge about these two programs to truly educate you in which one is best for what you might need it for. So if you're looking at using Revit or ArchiCAD, the first thing that comes to mind is price. For example, Revit gives you their price straight away on their website at 3,140 Australian dollars every single year per user. That is a very high price tag to pay for a 3D modeling program, but when it's one of the best, they have a reason to justify it. If you want everything in Revit suite, which includes all their engineering platforms and all their vehicle movement paths and everything I'm going to go through later in this video, that bumps it up to almost 4,200 Australian dollars. ArchiCAD, on the other hand, isn't as user-friendly and doesn't give you their prices up front. As an ArchiCAD user, I know how much it costs, and it is just a little bit less than Revit. If you're looking at starting up an ArchiCAD license, getting started, installing a new platform, it's probably going to cost you a little bit more, but I know they have introduced a new payment method which might differ from my experience. But currently, a 1-year membership for ArchiCAD is 2,400 Australian dollars with no plugins. This is the catch. ArchiCAD requires a couple plugins, and it's definitely a con that we're going to speak about soon. So let's start off by talking about conceptual design. Conceptual design is where we kind of idealize and understand the project. We take a look at it from a 3D massing point of view. It could be anything from a simple square to a parametric object. In Revit, Revit allows you to genuinely and freely express your ideas in any way, shape or form. It has so many internal built-in engines and so many plugins to get you creative. You can go from a simple square box to a full 3D parametric skyscraper that you'd see in Dubai within a couple of minutes. ArchiCAD, on the other hand, is a little bit more basic. ArchiCAD gives you the SketchUp feel, blocking and stacking, pull and push, to really give you a user-friendly, easy experience of blocking and stacking and conceptual design. ArchiCAD has recently, in ArchiCAD 23, gotten a Grasshopper and Rhino plugin. So if you have done parametric design in the past or are looking to do parametric design now, then ArchiCAD has finally caught up to the game. You're able to implement your Grasshopper or Rhino plugin into ArchiCAD and truly do some parametric design. If you have no idea what Rhino and Grasshopper are and what parametric design is, disregard it because you probably don't need it. Parametric design is a very specific niche of architecture. It's predominantly used for free-form organic high-rises and things that cost millions, if not billions of dollars. We're talking the skyscrapers in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and those sorts of towers. The free-form, curving and twisting, unique shapes that you don't usually get straight out of a box. The benefit of parametric design is that you can simply and easily adjust and fine-tune the whole building in one simple command by coding it out instead of manually going through, shifting floor plate by floor plate by floor plate to get a unique curve or angle that you might like. But that's a whole nother ballpark, which we can definitely talk about later if it's something that interests you guys. Leave a comment down below and let me know. Documenting a building can take anywhere from a week to a couple of years, depending on the size of the project. So that means these files can get very big very, very quickly. Your hardware implementations are very important, and we'll talk about that in the next stage of this video. But for documentation purposes alone, Revit and ArchiCAD do very similar things and produce very similar end results. If you know how to use the program, you will be able to document 99% of projects in both. However, if you're moving to a BIM platform like ArchiCAD or Revit, you're more than likely moving it for simple integration between your consultants. If you're a student and you aren't thinking about consultants yet, probably start because it's a very, very important part of your career. Consultants are people like structural and civil engineers. Their information can critically change the design of your building. If you aren't careful, if you aren't really paying attention to their detail and what they're documenting, there can be lots of mistakes on site. So that's the reason BIM was actually created, to implement one model for everybody to use and to simply integrate it properly. So that when we're designing on a computer, we can get it right there and then, and on site, there's no real errors, but in reality, there's less errors. Revit does things very differently to how ArchiCAD does them in BIM management. Revit, for example, is an all-in-one platform where most engineers or highly competent large-scale engineers are already on Revit. They're using Revit the same way you are, and you can very quickly and very easily implement your models and send them between each other so you aren't missing any major information. If a giant column comes right through the middle of your showroom and you haven't picked it up on their 2D floor plan, that's going to be a big problem. But if you implement their software straight into your model, then it's very easy to spot that giant column in the middle of your showroom. That's the advantage of Revit. Most engineers are already on Revit. So civil, structural, plumbing, electrical, most of these guys are documenting on Revit, so their IFC files can very simply and very easily be integrated with you. But that's also one of the limitations of Revit. It doesn't have the free-form capabilities of talking with every single program like ArchiCAD does. ArchiCAD does this in a very different manner. It does it through an open BIM management software. So it's a process of exporting IFC files, converting them, and importing them directly into your document. It's a very similar process to what Revit does, but it can do it with many other programs that Revit can't at the moment. The chances of your engineers and consultants being on a different program besides ArchiCAD and Revit are pretty slim if they're using 3D modeling. If they're using 2D modeling, well then this information is kind of useless to you anyway. You're going back to the typical 2D drawings and checking through every single bit and piece. When it comes to plugins and additional information that you might need, Revit has a lot more in its general database that you can get going and start works with straight away. Whereas with ArchiCAD, you're more than likely going to have to pay for additional plugins to get some of those very key features that are already on Revit. An example is something that we use in our day-to-day office, and that's CAD image and 4D library. The basic library in ArchiCAD is pretty sad. There isn't that much in it, whereas 4D library is an additional expense every single year, but it gives you a lot more data to play with, better doors, better windows, better furniture in general. And keynotes and roof coverings, for example, really let you document your projects in great detail and consistently between different architects and draftspeople. If you're looking to cost out your project, both of these have different plugins. Again, they're both paid plugins. They take a lot of time and a lot of effort to set up properly. If you want to go in and find out how much this design is going to cost before you go out and tender it to a builder, then yes, you can definitely do it in both of these platforms, but neither one is going to give you the magic formula where you can just go, how much is this going to cost? And it will spit out $4 million or something like that. You are going to have to invest a lot of time, and you're going to have this prior knowledge to actually set this software up. In my opinion, Revit is a very, very good documenting tool. But because it has all of the engineers and all of the consultants, the sweep paths, the vehicle movements, all of this inbuilt into the software, it takes a lot longer to learn Revit from the get-go. And if you're looking at doing residential design or very simple design, then Revit is going to take you longer to learn, but you're also going to be able to do everything up to commercial design. Whereas ArchiCAD, you can learn that a lot quicker. I'm not kidding you. Revit is so inbuilt and ingrained into its precise methodology of how you need to use it, whereas ArchiCAD's a little bit more forgiving. So you can learn it in a fraction, maybe a third, half the time it will take you to learn Revit. And by the time you've learned the skills to actually design and document a residential house, you've already learned the basic skills to design and document a commercial project. You obviously need the knowledge and know-how to do the commercial project, but that's a whole other thing. So in my opinion, if you're learning residential, small to medium scale commercial projects and don't have a clue about either of these, ArchiCAD, you will learn it a lot quicker. Revit, you'll learn it, but it will take you a lot longer and you're going to get confused along the way. There's no doubt about it. The next category is visualization. And visualization is very important because it's what sells your project to the client or to the investor. If you don't have good imagery, good movies, then you're going to look a little bit average. The competition is very firm and very hard at the moment. People are producing photorealistic renders from the day one. So if you can't produce something half decent from your software, you need to step up your game, basically. Both of these softwares have inbuilt 3D rendering engines, and both of them they're okay. They get the job done and they're relatively quick. Revit has the advantage here of having a cloud-based rendering software. So with both of these programs, if you're rendering on your computer, it takes away the ability to use your computer for a pretty decent amount of time if you're rendering a high quality image. Whereas Revit's advantage is the fact that you can push it to the cloud and it's done in a couple of minutes whilst you continue to work. However, that isn't the main principle here. 3D visualization, if you want it to be good, is an external program and it's definitely an external plugin. Both of them have millions that you can look at. Revit has millions and more because it's been designed in such a way, I guess, and coded in such a way that people are easily transitioned and pushed to this program. It's also in very high demand, so more people are creating programs for Revit. Having said that, at the moment, the best three, in my opinion, are probably V-Ray, 3ds Max, and Enscape for Revit. These three take a little bit of time to learn. Enscape, probably not as much, it's very user-friendly. But 3ds Max and V-Ray are two programs that you have to dive into, spend a few weeks to really understand them, and be able to produce some photorealistic images. At the end of that, you will get some amazing results if you put in the time, but it's another program to learn. Whereas ArchiCAD has just bought the rights to Twinmotion and Unreal Engine. If you're a gamer or know anything about games, you know that some of the best and most photorealistic games ever produced are produced through Unreal Engine. It is phenomenal what this program can do if you have the know-how and the skill to do it. Where Twinmotion comes into the play is the fact that Twinmotion uses Unreal Engine software and their knowledge and creates it into a very user-friendly, easy to understand program and something that you can pick up in seconds. Twinmotion can produce near photorealistic imagery instantly, live between the two software. So you can have both up at the same time, editing live, changing things, changing materials, textures, doors, windows, whatever you need to create the perfect image or video. It is slowly getting better, and with the new 2020 version of Twinmotion and the new 2020 version of Unreal Engine, we're starting to see V-Ray introduced into Unreal Engine, and the promise is it will become available in Twinmotion as well. So at the current time, ArchiCAD is probably a little bit behind of what Revit's plugins can do, but I think that in the next year or two, ArchiCAD's inbuilt Twinmotion and Unreal Engine is going to far surpass what Revit can do in the same amount of time. ArchiCAD also has the added benefit of the app called BIMX. Now, BIMX is a very simple and user-friendly app that you can download on your iPad, your smartphone, any smart device, and it basically implements a 3D model into your iPad that you can move, twist, cut sections, look at elevations, and you can pass this information on to your clients. Most people will definitely be impressed by this 3D software. It means their whole house is modeled in 3D, they can zoom and fly through every little nook and cranny, and they really get excited about it. Whereas Revit does not have that capability at the current time, to my knowledge. So what are the pros and cons here? Let's start with Revit. Revit is in extreme demand in the industry, and more firms are taking up Revit. You're going to need to know Revit to get into most of the larger firms. Most of your engineers are probably going to be on Revit, so you're going to have the ability to document that little bit better against ArchiCAD. However, there are some cons as well to Revit. For example, once your files get too big and you start to try and share them with masses and masses of people, the file becomes unstable pretty quickly and crashes quite often. It also isn't multi-thread compatible, so you're going to need a very fast CPU and a dedicated custom-built PC to run this program with very large files effectively. You're probably not going to be able to get away with your off-the-shelf HP computer that has 8 gigs of RAM and nothing inside it. You're going to need at least 16 gigs of RAM, a very good CPU, a very good GPU to run most of the projects you need. And the other downside is it is Windows only compatible. If you want to run it on a Mac, you're going to have to run parallel. So what about ArchiCAD? ArchiCAD has some great pros. First of all, it's available on Mac and Windows, so you can use it on any platform and jump between them in your office if you need to. You have the added benefit of BIMX for free and Twinmotion and Unreal Engine playing catch up. That's a pro/con for sure. In my personal opinion, it has a better UI and a much easier and faster learning curve. Unfortunately though, there isn't as many plugins for ArchiCAD, and as I've said before, it's starting to play catch up against Revit now. It's catching up, and I think it will surpass it very soon, because it used to be the opposite about 10 years ago, where ArchiCAD was the dominant one and Revit was playing catch up, but now they seem to be swapping courses with this new visualization and the implementations that they're putting in. Even though it is cheaper, it does cost you a little bit more when you end up purchasing all the additional add-ons. Revit already has these add-ons built in, but unfortunately, playing catch up again, you have to pay for more add-ons. So what's the conclusion? If you're a student, I think it's very important that you learn both of these programs. Students need to be able to really get into any firm when they graduate, because you can't just walk into the firm you want and go, hello boss, I want a job. You're gonna have to apply and be very competitive, which means you're probably gonna get rejected from the firm you really wanna go to, and you're gonna have to have your second or third pick. In other cases, you might have your 10th pick, but that doesn't matter. It's knowing and being able to understand both programs to give yourself the best chance at getting into both firms. If you're already in the industry, stick to what you know. It's very simple. Firms use the program they use. You're never going to change that. If you know ArchiCAD, you're not going to walk into a firm that uses Revit and convince them all to learn ArchiCAD. You're the one that's going to have to learn Revit. If you're already on Revit and you're doing Revit very well in your firm, what's the point of changing? It's going to take you years to build new templates and really get up to the speed you were on the previous program for some simple features that might not save you that much time in the future. It's really weighing up those pros and cons there. And I guess if you were only to pick one, it depends what kind of architect you want to be, what kind of designer you want to be. If you want to design residential and only residential, I don't think you need to overcomplicate it by learning Revit. I think ArchiCAD is perfect, it's cheaper, and it's faster to learn. I think if you're even going up to 5, 6, 10-story apartment buildings, ArchiCAD is still perfect. It's powerful enough, it's quick enough, and it's easy enough to be able to document something of this sort. When you move into those high rises, and I'm talking 50, 60 stories, Abu Dhabi, Dubai level quality, and you're a multi-billion-dollar firm, you're probably going to need to know Revit, because it has the ability to do this parametric design and to implement with all your engineers. When it's that size, you need to make sure every detail is right. And if you're looking to visualize, well, realistically, neither of them has great visualization. You're going to need to learn a third separate program to be able to produce the best imagery. So pick what you think is going to work best for you as a designer, as an architect, and go from there. They both have the ability to produce photorealistic versions. Just how you do it is completely up to you. Anyway, that's all for me today, guys. I think that was a very long rant, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I gave you some clarity around Revit and ArchiCAD and which one you should pick for your specific design goals. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash that subscribe button 2020 style. And as always, I'll see you next Monday.